XL නම් භාගයයි මාසයකට වඩා රිදි සුවතයි.
Creating global value. State Minister says training a skilled workforce can help Sri Lanka achieve $10 billion in remittances soon.
We can do that very well. But we need to ensure that each person who goes abroad is trained, is able to have a good life there as well, and then that money can come back into the country.
Speeding up the process. The country's beach cleanup efforts get a $180,000 boost from Singaporean anti-plastic entity.
We only see the plastic nurdles, but we don't know how much nitric acids and other chemicals are damaging the marine environment.
Keeping the pace, Sri Lanka ramps up vaccinations with a second 24-hour centre as the surpassing of its 10 million milestone comes in for international plaudits. Mum's the word. Commission member says port city investments are already in the pipeline.
But I'm not sure the investors would want us to disclose those things too much.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Monday, the 2nd of August, 2021.
හඳුන්වා දෙන නව ක්‍රියා ෂැම්පූ තුන්ගුණයක් ක්‍රියාකාරී ඇන්ටි ඩෑන්ඩ්‍රෆ් තාක්ෂණයෙන් ඉසේ සම පෝෂණය කර ඉසුරු ඉවත් කරමින් නැවත ඇතිවීම වළකයි. නව ක්‍රියා ෂැම්පූ.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammike Kanaka. Now then, Sri Lanka surpassed 10 million single-dose vaccinations as of last evening. Only 1.5 million of the population above 30 years of age still remain in the waiting list to get their first dose. Now, what's more, a second 24-hour vaccination centre was also made available to the public in Colombo today. Meanwhile, health experts have also spoken of a potential third shot of a COVID-19 vaccine. Deputy Director General of Education and Research at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hemantha Herath, says that annual vaccinations are the most common method against viruses.
On Sunday, all those awaiting the second dose of the AstraZeneca's Covishield vaccine had some good news. Over 700,000 doses of the vaccine were delivered to Sri Lanka as part of a donation from Japan. When Sri Lanka got its inoculation drive underway, it used the AstraZeneca jab and they were given to the frontline workers and people in the Western Province. Sunday's AstraZeneca batch is the first to its kind to arrive in the island following the global shortage of the jab. Keen to get things moving, a 24-hour vaccination centre operated by the army was set up at the Viharamadevi Park in Colombo yesterday. It proved to be a success with people coming for their second dose, even in the middle of the night. The centre had administered 19,075 Covishield doses from 8:30 am yesterday until 5 am today. Further, the vaccination centre operated at the Army Medical Corps in Verahara 2 attracted large crowds. The centre, which was supposed to conclude vaccinations by 6 pm, however, as people kept coming, the vaccinations kept going late into the night. All in all, 69,266 people were given the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine yesterday. Meanwhile, 114,997 people were given the first dose of the Sinopharm vaccine yesterday, with 31,223 people getting the second dose of the same. There were 432 vaccinations using the Pfizer jab as well. In total, 215,918 vaccinations were conducted in the island yesterday. That puts the number of people to have been at least partially vaccinated at over 10 million, a milestone which looked afar not that long ago. As things stood last evening, 10,076,981 persons had been given at least the first dose of a vaccine against COVID-19, with 2,254,887 persons among them being fully vaccinated.
අද වෙනකොට අපි ලංකාවේ අවුරුදු 30ට වැඩි ජනගහනය ලක්ෂ 115යි. ඒ ලක්ෂ 115 වෙන් ලක්ෂ 100කට දීලා තිනවා මේ වෙනකොට COVID-19 එන්නත. ඒ අනුව අපිට තව ලක්ෂ 15යි ඉතිරි වෙලා තියෙන්නේ අවුරුදු 30ට වැඩි ජනගහනය. ඉතින් මේ අවුරුදු 30ට වැඩි උදවිය එන්නත් කරන්නේ නිමා වෙනවත් එක්කම අපි අවුරුදු 18 සහ 30 කාණ්ඩයේ අයට එන්නත් ලබා දීම ආරම්භ කරනවා. මේ සඳහා අවශ්‍ය සයිනෝෆාම් එන්නත් තවත් මාත්‍රා ලක්ෂ 40ක් ලබන සතිය තුල අපේ රටට ලැබෙන්න නියමිතයි. මේ වෙනකොට විශේෂඥයන් සලකා බලාගෙන යනවා සති 4කින් තමයි සයිනෝෆාම් එන්නතේ දෙවනි මාත්‍රාව ලබා දෙන්නේ. නමුත් මේ පිළිබඳ පරීක්ෂණ කරපු අය ඒ වගේම නිෂ්පාදකයෝ අපිට දැනුම් දීලා තියෙනවා සති 3කින් උනත් දෙවනි මාත්‍රාව ලබා දෙන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. ඉතින් ඒ ගැනත් අපි අවධානය යොමු කරනවා.
In the meantime, the rapid pace of Sri Lanka's vaccination drive has caught the attention of Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the chief of the World Health Organization. In a tweet, he said that the WHO is glad to see that Sri Lanka is on track to fully vaccinate 10% of its population ahead of the September target. In response, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa expressed the government's aim to vaccinate the country's entire population. Dr. Ghebreyesus then appreciated the president's commitment and pledged to work closely with the island to end the pandemic. The Chinese embassy in Colombo too was impressed by Sri Lanka's pace of vaccination. Taking to Twitter, the embassy said that it was harder to determine which was faster, with the China winning 4 gold medals within 1 hour today at the Olympics or Sri Lanka vaccinating over 3 million people in the last 7 days. As for today, AstraZeneca's second dose rollout continued with a new addition. The vaccination center at Derana was converted to a 24-hour inoculation center also operated by the army. As it was the case yesterday, the public response was very positive.
This is actually well organized. After 4 months, we have received this second dose, and thank you very much for the forces. They are very polite and they have organized very well, which last time we did not have this, and they have arranged the seatings, and not even 1 hour we have finished our second dose and we have come out.
I am very much impressed and I am very happy the way we were treated at the Viharamadevi Park by the army officers. I came here somewhere around 7:30 and within 5 minutes everything was over and vaccine was given without any problem.
Meanwhile, vaccinations were also administered at several hospitals and MOH offices in the western province during the day. Meanwhile, the country's vaccine inventory was boosted by a further 104,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine which arrived in the island today. It takes the number of Pfizer doses Sri Lanka has taken delivery of so far to 316,200.
අඩසේ වසකට වැඩි ජනතා විශ්වාසය නව සංයෝගයකින් Rhino roofing සහ ceiling sheet.
For the first time in 2 months, all employees in the state sector were called to work today, with interprovincial public transportation services also resuming. With the potential of over 1 million state sector employees mixing in society, health experts call on the people to be mindful of the precarious situation the country finds itself in, especially with some predicting the worst in the coming months.
Over the last 2 months, state sector employees were given a chance to work from home where necessary, and state institutions only had skeleton staff at the workplace. It was part of the efforts to curb the spread of COVID-19, especially the third wave of the virus hitting the island hard after the April festive season. And today, all state sector employees were called into work. With a population of over 1 million people being employed in the state sector, interprovincial bus and train services also commenced to support the vast number. The Department of Railways announced that 15 trains will operate between Kandy, Ramukkana, Mahava, Halawata, Beliyatta and Gaul. Though the public transportation resumed between provinces, the health authorities urge the people to only travel if necessary.
කිසිම කෙනෙකුට අනවශ්‍ය ගමනක් යාමට මේ සංචරණ සීමාවෙන් අපි අවසර දීලා නැහැ. අපි හිතා ගන්න ඕනේ අපේ හදවතට එකඟව යා යුතු ගමනක්ද නැද්ද කියලා තීරණය කරලා එවැනි ගමනක් යාමටයි මේ සංචරණ සීමා ඉවත් කරලා තියෙන. නීතියකින් දැම්මොත් සියලුම දෙනාට අවශ්‍ය කෙනාටයි අනවශ්‍ය කෙනාටයි කියලා වෙනසකින් තොරව සියලු දෙනාටම මේ සංචරණ සීමා බලපාන්න වෙනවා. ඒ නිසා අපි මේක සියලු දෙනාගෙන්ම ඉල්ලා සිටින්නේ අත්‍යවශ්‍යම කටයුත්තක් සඳහා සංචරණයේ යෙදීමට අවශ්‍ය වුණොත් ඒ සඳහා ඉඩ ලබාගෙන අනෙක් සෑම අවස්ථාවකම ඒකෙන් වැළකී තමන්ගේ නිවසට හෝ කාර්යාලයට හෝ සීමිත ස්ථානයක රැඳී සිටීමයි මේ මොහොතේ වැදගත් වෙන්නේ.
The third wave has also put the healthcare system in the country under some strain. Some patients are developing symptoms, meaning more beds at hospitals and COVID treatment centers are needed. Despite the health authorities insisting that the bed situation is under control, the same is not true for the Lady Ridgeway Hospital for Children.
මේ වෙනකොට සාමාන්‍යයෙන් 15ක් 20ක් විතර දිනකට වාර්තා වෙන රෝගීන්. එතකොට අපිට රෝහල තුල තබා ගැනීමවත් බැරි තරම් රෝගීන් ප්‍රමාණයක් වාර්තා වෙනවා. මේ වෙලාවේ රෝගීන් 70 ගාණක් දෛනිකව අපි ප්‍රතිකාර කරන රෝහල තුල ඉන්නව නතර වෙලා එසේ ඉන්නේ අපි දෛනිකව දරුවන් වෙනත් රෝහල් වලට ස්ථාන මාර්ග වල යවනවා. ඒකද රෝහලේ ඉඩකඩ නැති නිසා. ඉතින් ඊට අමතරව අපි බොරැල්ල ප්‍රදේශයේ රාජගිරියේ වෙනත් ගොඩනැගිල්ලකුත් ලබාගත් කුඩා දරුවන් රැකබලා ගැනීම සඳහා ප්‍රතිකාර කිරීම සඳහා ඒ ගොඩනැගිල්ලට අද දිනේ සිට රෝගීන් යැවීම සඳහා කටයුතු කරනවා. ඒකට රෝගීන් 70ක් පමණ අපිට රැකබලා ගැනීමට හැකියාවක් තියෙන මේ ස්ථානයේ ඒ ස්ථානයත් තිරේ ගියොතින් අපි තවත් ස්ථානයක් ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා කටයුතු කරනවා. ළමයි 600කට අධික ප්‍රමාණයක් මේ වෙන විට රිජ්ජු ආරේ ළමා රෝහලෙන් වාර්තා වෙලා තියෙනවා.
For a fourth consecutive day, the daily COVID-19 caseload stayed over 2,000. 2,510 infections were reported across all 25 districts yesterday. The Western Province confirmed the most number of new cases with 937. Its three districts, Kaluthara, Gampa and Colombo, accounted for 398, 384 and 155 new infections respectively. As for today, 2,382 new COVID-19 cases have been confirmed so far. Sri Lanka's daily COVID recoveries meanwhile came in just under 2,000. With the recovery of 1,958 patients, the overall figure now stands at 280,868.
Acting Director General of the Colombo Port City Economic Commission, Sali Vikramasuri, says that there have been some investments at the Colombo Port City in the past 2 months. Speaking to Indivari Amwatta on our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, Vikramasuri also noted that the Commission will have to take some risks in what it recommends to the President.
There are concerns that overseas companies registered under CPC are exempt from having to comply with provisions of the Companies Act, and that this prevents these companies from needing to comply with the Companies Act, which allows the public to inspect certain records of the company. This also means, again, not under parliamentary oversight.
We haven't yet defined those regulations. At the moment, the Companies Act applies. The Register of Company is functional. These are prevailing until superseded. Now, one of the things the Commission is doing in the background is actually looking around the world and engaging international consulting teams, legal teams, to draft regulations that fulfill public expectations. There's no question about this being a place where people can do what they want. It's just that they will be able to do what they have to do to better themselves quicker, faster and more transparently.
Now the Commission, in consultation with the President, can identify business of strategic importance and grant incentives such as tax exemptions of up to 40 years. Now how does this put Sri Lanka? Now Sri Lanka commits to certain promises to a venture, an investment, but the next Commission could decide that this is unnecessary.
The President does not direct the Commission, he empowers the Commission and he approves the Commission's actions. So from that point of view, the Commission is free to devise a mechanism under which it can best achieve the project objectives. You talked about tax incentives. This is all happening on reclaimed land. That reclaimed land has been reclaimed at a certain cost. If certain strategic projects, let's say, are not commercially viable without some assistance, then they need to be made viable. They need to be incentivized. For example, you can't build an international school paying $8 per meter square for the 6 acres that's on the school plot. You could conceivably build a 50-story skyscraper there, but not a school. But it's a planned city. The planned city has a school, it has a hospital, it has a convention center, it has a marina. Those are the strategic projects. later on in life, when the city is built and there are restaurants and offices and salons, those are not strategic projects. So yes, we may have to provide concessions on land, on tax, on rates, on a variety of different things to make them more commercially viable. Otherwise, they may not happen.
So does this mean it is just the president and commission members who are able to make these decisions?
The commission is vested with the land in order to responsibly achieve success. So yes, the answer is the commission has to take some risk in terms of what it recommends to the president, but it will do so very responsibly, very cautiously, and only to ensure that certain things happen that otherwise might not happen.
This set of guidelines or rules and requirements, will you be specifying to investors how these exemptions will be granted, or is it by case consideration?
First of all, there are actually at this point only 74 blocks, and there are therefore only 74 real estate development opportunities. Each one has a specifically defined purpose. Each one has its own development control regulations. So they are well defined already. So there's a plan that we've drawn up which envisages staged incentivization depending on when a particular project is required. So now therefore for each of these, guidelines are being drawn, and in fact guidelines will be drawn, approvals will be obtained, and packages will be built for each of those 74 that an investor who is qualified to execute can simply purchase. Take a hospital, for example. Sri Lanka would like to have a hospital there. Which hospital is going to invest in the hospital plot? So therefore there's a hospital brand, there's an investor that needs to come up with the money, there's the commission as the owner of the land. The commission must make it happen. To make it happen, it has to understand the business model of everybody and act accordingly. So yes, there are rules for some things are negotiations.
Offshore companies and banks setting up at the port city are exempt from the Companies Act and Banking Act. There seems to be duplicity here.
It may sound like that, but actually speaking, the current banking actors permit offshore banking, and offshore banking must be encouraged because the port city being defined as, for the purpose of the act, an offshore jurisdiction from the point of view of financial transaction. What leads investment are financial services and banks. So if we don't work with banks to bring them in under an enabling regulation, then how's the investor going to engage with the project? So there isn't a duplicity. The Port City Act permits us and requires us to actually frame our own regulations which govern those areas. Until such time is done, we are subject to the prevailing law.
Any investments in the pipeline so far during the 2 months that the Port City commissioned?
Yes, but I'm not sure the investors would want us to disclose those things too much.
We will see you shortly after this break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, Sri Lanka's beach cleanup operations from the MV Express Pearl ship disaster received a boost today with the handing over of 8 beach cleanup machines to separate plastic waste material, including the dreaded noodles that continue to wash up on the country's shores. Costing $180,000, the 8 machines were donated by a Singaporean non-profit to the Marine Environment Protection Authority.
The Marine Environment Protection Authority today received 8 Beach Tech Hydro Sweepy machines from Singapore-based global non-profit The Alliance to End Plastic Waste, costing $180,000. The German-built machines are capable of effectively cleaning up plastic noodles and other types of plastic waste in a safe manner while minimizing human contact with hazardous materials. Speaking at a ceremony to hand over the machines to the chairperson of the Marine Environment Protection Authority, Darshini Landapura, at Sarukko Beach in Negamo this morning, Foreign Secretary Admiral Professor Jayanath Kolomage stated that while cleanup operations continue, Sri Lankan authorities still need to find answers to how such a disaster was allowed to happen.
I don't think we can ever accurately calculate this damage, and we don't know how long this damage will be. But now we are saddled with cleaning our own beaches and claiming compensation and mitigating the damages done to the livelihood, tourism, our marine ecosystem. This is the worst maritime disaster to have happened to Sri Lanka. We only see the plastic nurdles, but we don't know how much nitric acids and other chemicals are damaging the ocean marine environment. We are the victim, but what about the countries before? What about the shipping company? What about the ship itself? What about the crew? Have they done enough is the question that we need to find answers to. Not necessarily for this damage, but to prevent future damages, future disasters like this.
State Minister for Money, Capital Markets and State Enterprise Reforms Ajit Nimad Cabral sees training a highly skilled workforce for the global market as a sustainable solution to the country's forex inflow bottlenecks. His views came as he addressed the launch of a Study Now, Pay Later nursing education program by the International Institute of Health Science today. The State Minister added that such programs are crucial in targeting $10 billion per year from foreign remittances.
A Study Now, Pay Later program was launched today by the International Institute of Health Sciences that aims to offer Sri Lankan youth international nursing education that will give them both local and international opportunities. Speaking at the launch, State Minister for Money, Capital Markets and State Enterprise Reforms Ajit Nimad Cabral called the program a forerunner for new ventures in the education field, which gels in with the government's vision of creating a properly trained and skilled labour force. The State Minister added that programs such as this can significantly aid Sri Lanka's push to increase foreign remittances from $7 billion to $10 billion in the near future.
If you can train caregivers, you can train others as well. So if you do that, we have a very good prospect of ensuring that Sri Lanka's foreign exchange challenges are also dealt with in a sustainable manner. We have been saying as a government that what is most important is not debt, but non-debt inflows into a country. I think that's why remittances are such an important ingredient in our overall external structure of our country. We earn around $7 billion now. We need to make that about $10 billion, and we can do that very well. But we need to ensure that each person who goes abroad is trained, is able to have a good life there as well, and then that money can come back into the country by way of new foreign exchange inflows. So it has several effects. This is not just merely a question of people having incomes and then generating money for themselves. It earns money for the country. The money goes directly into the villages that they live in, and then that can make enormous difference to the way we do and continue to do business in our country.
State Minister Cabral also pointed out that such programs can also serve to increase the global profile of Sri Lankan workers abroad and build up their reputations for possessing a very high skill set.
Sometimes when you go to certain countries, we see the awe in which Sri Lankans are held. But we also see in certain other countries that we don't have that kind of respect as well. So it's a matter for us to also consider carefully to ensure that we train people who can go and then deliver value to themselves and to the country.
In other local stories, police say that they will proceed to request the court tomorrow to name former Minister Rishad Badiuddin's brother-in-law as a suspect in the case pertaining to Shalini, the housemaid at the MP's residence who sustained burn injuries and died. The police say that the move was prompted after revelations of another maid at the MP's residence also claiming to have been sexually harassed by Badiuddin's brother-in-law.
The police have so far recorded statements from 40 persons over the death of a 16-year-old girl who succumbed after sustaining burns at MP Rishad Badiuddin's residence while she was serving as a housemaid. They say that around 10 women had served at the MP's household since 2009. All of them had been supplied by the middleman involved in the case, who is presently in remand custody. Police say that 2 of them have since died, one to cancer and the other had taken her own life, adding that statements have been recorded from the other 8 women. They also say that all of them had suffered various harms at MP Badiuddin's residence. One of the women who had served at Badiuddin's household, a 29-year-old, had told the police that she was too sexually harassed by Badiuddin's brother-in-law at the MP's residence in Borella. The MP's brother-in-law is in remand custody over the alleged sexual harassment of a 22-year-old girl during the time when Badiuddin was a minister.
Accordingly, we are going to report facts to the court, and we are going to make a request to court to name the ex-minister's brother-in-law as a suspect of that particular case. We are conducting further investigations.
In the meantime, the Government Analyst Department had inspected the MP's residence today, with our correspondent saying that the process took about an hour. Scene of crime officers too had inspected the MP's house. Officials of the Women and Children Bureau were also present at the residence today. As investigations move forward, demonstrations continue to be staged in the island, especially in the hill country, demanding justice for 16-year-old Ishalini.
Former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has filed a writ application before the Court of Appeal seeking a quashing of the recommendations made against him by the Presidential Commission to investigate political victimization. The petition also seeks an interim order preventing the implementation of the Commission's recommendations until the hearing of the petition is concluded. The UNP leader also points out in his petition that the Commission has not presented any charge sheet against him and that it had also not adequately sought any explanations from him either. Wickremesinghe also accuses the Presidential Commission of conducting investigations in an unlawful manner in violation of the legal principle of natural justice and labelled the recommendations as severely prejudicial towards him. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, Sri Lankan stocks closed 0.34% up today as the benchmark all-share price index gained 27.54 points to close at 8,148.02. The S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks, meanwhile, also gained 10.21 points to close at 3,072.38. Now, here's Dimantha Matthew with a brief report on today's market performance.
The market saw a bit of a struggle during the first half of the session, but afterwards we saw renewed buying interest coming into the market, especially with the retail community, and with that the market saw a bit of an uptick, and with that closed on a more stronger note, where the SPI saw a 27-point gain as the SPI ended just under 8,150 points.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.